Let me ask you something. How well do you think you know the people living under your own roof? You break bread with them. You watch TV with them. You pray with them. You think you know their heart, their habits, the way they walk, the way they smile. But what if I told you that the person sleeping in the room next to yours might not be who you think they are? What if the face is the same, but the soul behind the eyes is a stranger? My name is Lester Brooks. I'm 65 years old, a retired mechanic, and I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've seen engines that shouldn't run purr like kittens, and I've seen good men go bad over a few dollars. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the day my world split in two. It started with a phone call. A simple phone call from my youngest daughter, Renee. She's a pilot, flying big jets across the ocean. She called me and said, "Pops, something is wrong. My brother-in-law is on my flight." I laughed. I said, "Baby, that's impossible. Maurice is upstairs taking a shower." Her voice dropped to a whisper that chilled my blood. "Pops, I have his passport in my hand. He just boarded. He is sitting in seat 2A. And he is not alone." At that exact moment, I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs behind me. A deep voice called out, "I'm glad you're home, Pops. If you're watching this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had a gut feeling that someone you loved was lying to you? I want to know your story. Because this is my story of betrayal, confusion, and ultimately, revenge. It was a Tuesday morning. The kind of Tuesday that feels just like every other day in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood. The sun was filtering through the kitchen blinds, casting stripes of light across the linoleum floor that I had just mopped the night before. The house smelled like bacon grease and strong coffee, my signature blend. I was standing at the sink, my hands deep in warm, soapy water. I was rushing a bit. I wanted to get the dishes done before the grease settled on the cast-iron skillet. My joints were aching a little. Rain was coming, my knees always knew, but my spirit was good. My oldest daughter, Tasha, had left for work about 20 minutes earlier. Tasha is an architect, smart as a whip, always carrying big rolls of blueprints and stressing about deadlines. She had kissed my cheek, grabbed a travel mug of coffee, and flown out the door, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Bye, Pops. Don't wait up for me, I have a site visit late tonight," she had yelled. Then there was my grandson, Amari. That clever little rascal. 7 years old and already thinks he's the man of the house. I had just watched him run to the school bus, his backpack bouncing up and down, shouting about how he was going to trade his apple for a bag of chips. The house was finally quiet. Or so I thought. Upstairs, I heard the heavy thud of footsteps. That was Maurice, my son-in-law, Tasha's husband. He had been living with us for about 3 years now. A good-looking young man, fit, always at the gym. He worked as a personal trainer and entrepreneur, whatever that meant these days. His deep voice floated down the staircase, echoing in the hallway. "Pops, I'm gonna hop in the shower real quick." I scrubbed a plate and yelled back, "All right, son. Just don't use up all the hot water like you did last week." I heard his low chuckle. "I got you, Pops." The bathroom door clicked shut. A few seconds later, the pipes in the old walls groaned, and I heard the rush of water starting. It was a familiar sound, the rhythm of our home. Tasha working, Amari learning, Maurice getting ready for his day, and me keeping the ship afloat. I was humming a little tune, feeling content. I had barely put the last plate on the drying rack when the landline phone on the wall rang. That shrill, old-school ring. I wiped my hands on my apron, the one Amari gave me that says, "Grill Master," and picked up the receiver. "Hello? Brooks Residence." "Hey, Pops." The voice was bright, clear, and full of energy. It was Renee, my youngest. My superstar. While Tasha built things on the ground, Renee conquered the skies. She was a co-pilot for a major international airline. "Hey, baby girl." I leaned against the counter, smiling. "Where are you in the world today?" "London." "Tokyo?" She laughed. "Not yet, Pops. I'm still on the ground at JFK. We're prepping for a flight to Paris. We've got a layover, and I had a few minutes before final boarding, so I just wanted to call and say I love you." "I love you too, honey," I said, looking out the window at the oak tree in the yard. "You stay safe up there. How's the weather looking?" "Clear skies, Pops. Smooth sailing." We chatted for a minute about nothing in particular. She asked about my blood pressure. I asked if she was eating enough vegetables. Standard father-daughter stuff. But then, there was a pause. A long, strange pause on the line. I heard background noise, the ding of an airport announcement, the murmur of hundreds of people. "Renee? You still there?" I asked. "Yeah, Pops." Her tone had changed completely. The brightness was gone. It was replaced by confusion. "Pops, let me ask you something. Is Maurice at the house?" I furrowed my brow. "Maurice? Yeah, of course he is. Are you sure?" I looked over my shoulder toward the stairs. I could still hear the shower running full blast. "I'm positive, Renee," I said, a little confused by the question. "He's upstairs in the shower right now. I was just talking to him not 5 minutes ago. He's getting ready to go to the store for me." Silence again. But this time, the silence was heavy. "Renee?" "Pops," she said, her voice shaking now. "Pops, don't freak out." "But that's impossible." "What's impossible?" "I am standing at the gate," she whispered. I was checking the passenger manifest because there was a seating issue in first class. "Pops." I found a passport on the floor near the jet bridge. I picked it up. I opened it. She took a deep breath. "It's Maurice's passport. Maurice Williams. Date of birth, June 12, 1990. It's him, Pops." I let out a nervous laugh. "Honey, come on. He probably lost it. Maybe he dropped it weeks ago and someone found it." "No, Pops," she cut me off, her voice sharp. I went onto the plane. I walked through the first-class cabin to check seat 2A. "I'm looking at him right now." My grip on the phone tightened. "What do you mean you're looking at him?" "I'm looking at the back of his head," she said, describing it in detail. "That fresh fade haircut. The scar on the back of his neck. He's wearing a gray tailored suit. He's drinking champagne. And Pops, he's not alone." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" "He's sitting next to a woman," Renee said, disgust dripping from her voice. "A very elegant woman. Expensive jewelry. They are leaning in close, Pops. He's holding her hand. He's kissing her knuckles." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Renee, stop playing. That ain't funny." "I am not playing," she hissed. "I know my own brother-in-law. I am staring right at him. But I hear the water." I stammered, turning around to face the hallway. "The shower is running, Renee." He spoke to me. He was wearing his white t-shirt and gym shorts. "Then who is on my plane? And more importantly, who is in your house?" The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. And right at that exact moment, the water upstairs stopped running. I froze. The phone was still pressed to my ear, but I couldn't speak. The silence in the house was sudden and terrifying. I heard the bathroom door creak open. I heard heavy, wet footsteps on the hallway floorboards. Then his voice. "Pops? Who you talking to?" Panic. Pure panic seized my chest. I couldn't let him know. If this man, whoever he was, knew that I knew, what would he do? Was I in danger? Was Tasha in danger? Just Deacon Jones from the church. I shouted back, my voice cracking. He wants to know about the potluck. I hung up the phone quickly, my hands trembling. I stood there, staring at the kitchen doorway, waiting. A moment later, Maurice walked in. He was wearing a clean blue polo shirt and khaki shorts. His hair was damp. He smelled of the peppermint soap we keep in the guest bath. He looked normal. He looked exactly like the man I had known for years. He flashed that charming smile, the one that made Tasha fall in love with him. Deacon Jones, huh? Maurice laughed, opening the fridge. That man talks more than a radio. He gonna keep you on the phone all day. I stared at him. I looked for a mask. I looked for a glitch. I looked for anything that would tell me this wasn't Maurice. But it was him. The same eyes. The same nose. The same walk. Yeah, I managed to say, my throat dry as sandpaper. He had a lot to say. Maurice grabbed a bottle of water. Well, Pops, like I said, I'm gonna head to the market early. Tasha texted and said we need produce. You want me to get you anything special? He seemed so relaxed, so at ease. Just tomatoes, I whispered. You got it. He grabbed his gym bag from the counter. I'll be back in an hour. He walked out the back door, whistling a tune. I watched him go through the kitchen window. I watched him unlock the gate with his right hand, swing it open, and walk down the street with that confident strut of his. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs. My legs gave out. Renee was in New York, looking at Maurice on a plane to Paris. I was in Phoenix, watching Maurice walk to the grocery store. I put my head in my hands. Lord, I prayed, either I am losing my mind, or the devil is at work in this house. After Maurice left, I didn't move for a long time. The house felt different now. The shadows seemed longer. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a secret being whispered. I started to think. I started to rewind the tape of the last 6 months. You know how it is, when you trust someone, you ignore the little things. You brush them off. Oh, he's just tired. Oh, he's just stressed. But now I was looking at everything with new eyes. I remembered Tasha crying in her room a month ago. I had asked her what was wrong. She said, I don't know, Pops. Some days Maurice is the sweetest man in the world. He brings me flowers, rubs my feet, tells me I'm beautiful. And then, the next day, it's like a switch flips. He's cold. He pushes me away. He forgets things we talked about yesterday. I had told her it was just marriage. Ups and downs. Foolish old man, I thought to myself. Then I remembered the incident with the car keys. 2 weeks ago, Maurice couldn't find his keys. He was tearing the house apart, screaming, sweating. Where did I put them? Who moved them? He was frantic. Then, the very next day, he walked in, hung the keys on the hook without looking, and sat down to watch TV like nothing happened. When I asked him about it, he looked at me blankly and said, What keys? I never lost them. I got up and walked into the living room. I looked at the family photos on the mantel. Tasha and Maurice on their wedding day. He looked so happy. Was it a lie? Was it all a lie? 3 p.m. The front door opened. It was Amari, coming home from school. Usually, he runs in like a tornado. Today, he walked in slowly, dragging his feet. Hey, Grandpa, he mumbled. Hey, little man, I said, trying to sound cheerful. How was school? Did you learn anything new? He dropped his backpack on the floor and sighed. Grandpa, is Daddy home? He went to the store, I said carefully. Why? Amari sat on the rug and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a drawing. It showed a stick figure of a man with a sad face, and a little boy next to him. Grandpa, Amari said, his voice small. Daddy is weird. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, Amari? Yesterday, Amari said, pointing to the drawing. Daddy played catch with me in the yard. He threw the ball really far with his right arm. He laughed a lot. He called me champ. It was the best day. I nodded. Okay. But this morning, Amari continued, looking up at me with big, confused eyes, I asked him to sign my permission slip for the zoo. He got mad. He said he was busy, and when he finally signed it, he used the wrong hand. I froze. The wrong hand? Yeah, Amari said. Daddy is right-handed, but this morning he held the pen in his left hand, and his writing looked like chicken scratch. It was ugly, Grandpa. I walked over and picked up the permission slip from his bag. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Maurice Williams. It was shaky. The loops were too big. The slant was backwards. I went to the drawer where we keep old receipts and pulled out a birthday card Maurice had given me last year. Happy birthday, Pops. Love. Maurice. That handwriting was neat. Sharp. Slanting to the right. I put the two papers side by side on the coffee table. They were written by two different people. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My 7-year-old grandson had noticed what I had been too blind to see. Grandpa, Amari whispered, leaning in close. Sometimes I think there's two daddies. The nice daddy and the mean daddy. I pulled Amari into a hug. I held him tight, trying to stop my own hands from shaking. Don't you worry, Amari, I whispered into his hair. Grandpa is going to figure this out. I couldn't sit still. I needed more proof. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. I told Amari to watch his cartoons, and I walked across the street to Ms. Hattie's house. Ms. Hattie has lived on this block since before I was born. She sits on her porch swing all day, snapping beans and watching the world. If a squirrel sneezes 3 blocks away, Ms. Hattie knows about it. I walked up her driveway. She was there, rocking back and forth, a glass of sweet tea in her hand. Afternoon, Lester, she called out. You look like you swallowed a lemon whole. What's troubling your spirit? I sat on the steps of her porch. Hattie, I need to ask you something strange. And I need you to be honest with me. She stopped rocking. She lowered her glasses and looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. Ask. Have you noticed anything odd about Maurice lately? Ms. Hattie didn't answer right away. She took a slow sip of her tea. She looked left, then right, as if checking for spies. Lester, she said, her voice low. I didn't want to say nothing because it ain't my business. But since you asked, yes. That boy has got 2 spirits inside him. What do you mean? Tuesday, she said, holding up a finger. Tuesday morning, he walks by. He sees me struggling with my garbage can. He runs over, smiles that $1,000,000 smile and says, Let me get that for you, Miss Hattie. He carries it to the curb. We talk about the weather. He asks about my hip. A perfect gentleman. Okay, I said. That sounds like Maurice. But then, she raised a second finger. Wednesday. Just the next day. I see him walking down the same street. I wave. I say, Good morning, Maurice. And Lester. He looked right through me. His eyes were cold, like ice. He didn't speak. He didn't nod. He just kept walking with this strut, like he owned the pavement. And he was carrying his gym bag on his left shoulder. His left shoulder? Yeah, Hattie nodded. The Tuesday Maurice carried it on his right. The Wednesday Maurice carried it on his left. And I'll tell you one more thing. She leaned in so close I could smell the lavender powder on her neck. Last week, I saw a car pick him up down at the corner. A black car. Expensive. Windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. But the driver rolled the window down just a crack to flick a cigarette. It was a woman's hand, Lester. Manicured nails. Red polish. Maurice got in that car, and he looked around like he was afraid someone would see him. I felt sick. "Thank you, Hattie," I said, standing up. "You've told me exactly what I needed to hear." "Be careful, Lester," she called after me. "Whatever is going on in that house, it ain't godly." I walked back into my house with a mission. I wasn't just a confused old man anymore. I was a father protecting his cubs. Around 5:30 p.m., the back door opened. Maurice, or whoever this was, walked in. He was carrying the grocery bag. I watched him closely. He was holding the bag in his left hand. "Hey, Mr. Brooks," he said softly. Mr. Brooks. The Maurice I knew called me Pops. Always. For 3 years. This man called me Mr. Brooks. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice flat. "You get the tomatoes?" "Yes, sir." He placed them on the counter. His movements were hesitant, almost shy. The man Renee described on the plane was drinking champagne and acting like a king. This man looked like he was afraid to take up space in his own kitchen. "Maurice," I said suddenly. He jumped a little. "Yeah." "I was thinking about Sunday dinner," I said, watching his eyes. "I was thinking we should sing that song Amari loves. You know, the one you guys sang last week." Panic flickered in his eyes. He licked his lips. "Oh, which song was that?" "You know," I pressed. "The one you sang to put him to sleep. You have a beautiful baritone voice, son." He swallowed hard. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I think I'm coming down with a cold, Mr. Brooks. My throat is really sore. I don't think I can sing right now." I nodded slowly. "A cold. Right. Yeah," he said, backing away toward the stairs. "I'm gonna go lay down before Tasha gets home. My head is killing me." He practically ran out of the room. I stood there in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps retreat. I pulled out a small spiral notebook from my pocket, the one I usually used for sermon notes, and a pen. I opened it to the first page and wrote, "The evidence. 1. Renee sees Maurice on Flight 809 to Paris. Seat 2A. 2. Maurice is here in Phoenix. 3. Amari says Daddy changed hands. Right to left. 4. Handwriting does not match. 5. Ms. Hattie saw 2 different personalities. 6. He calls me Mr. Brooks, not Pops. 7. He doesn't know the song." I stared at the list. The conclusion was insane, but it was the only one that made sense. There were 2 of them, and one of them was an imposter sleeping in my daughter's bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle. I heard Tasha come home late. I heard her go into their bedroom. I heard the murmur of voices. I prayed she was safe. I prayed that whoever was in that room with her wasn't dangerous. But my gut told me this wasn't about violence. This was about deception. This was a con. The next morning, Saturday, Tasha took Amari to a birthday party at the park. "Bye, Maurice." "Bye, Pops," she called out. "Bye, baby," I said. "See you later," the man on the couch said. He didn't get up to kiss her. He just waved. As soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, the atmosphere in the house changed. The man stood up. He walked to the window and watched them leave. Then, his shoulders slumped. He let out a long, heavy sigh, like he had been holding his breath for hours. He turned to me. "Mr. Brooks, I'm going to head out for a bit. Just going to the store." "Again?" I asked, eyeing him over my newspaper. "You went to the store yesterday." I forgot something," he stammered. "Just need some fresh air." He grabbed a blue duffel bag from the closet. He didn't look at me. He opened the front door and slipped out. I waited. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. I folded my newspaper. I grabbed my keys and my old baseball cap. I went out the back door so he wouldn't see me. I crept around the side of the house. I saw him walking down the street. He wasn't walking toward the grocery store. He was walking toward the bus stop. But he didn't wait for the bus. He kept walking. He walked past the nice houses. He walked past the park. He crossed over Martin Luther King Boulevard, where the sidewalks start to crack and the streetlights don't always work. He was heading to the Bottoms, a neighborhood I hadn't stepped foot in for 20 years, a place where people go when they don't want to be found. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I'm 65 years old. I'm too old to be playing detective, but my daughter's life was on the line. I kept my distance, hiding behind parked cars and telephone poles. He walked with his head down, holding that bag tight to his chest with his left hand. Finally, after 20 minutes of walking, he stopped. He stood in front of a small, dilapidated house. The paint was peeling off in strips like dead skin. The screen door was rusted through. There was a single wilted flower pot on the porch. House number 14. The man looked left. He looked right. He didn't see me crouching behind a dumpster. He walked up the steps, knocked a specific rhythm on the door. Knock, 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 and waited. The door opened just a crack. He slipped inside, and the door shut tight. I stood up, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I stared at that house. This wasn't a store. This wasn't a gym. This was the answer. I took a deep breath, adjusted my cap, and marched across the street. I wasn't going to knock politely. I was going to kick the door down if I had to. I walked up the steps. I raised my fist, and I banged on the wood hard enough to wake the dead. Open up, I shouted. I know you're in there. Open this door before I call the police. Silence. I banged again. I ain't playing games, son. Open up. Slowly, the door creaked open. But what I saw on the other side, that was something I never expected in a million years. I stood on that porch, my fist still raised, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The wood of the door was rough under my knuckles. I had just watched a man who looked exactly like my son-in-law leave in a taxi, dressed like a king. Now, I was demanding answers from whoever was left inside this crumbling house in the forgotten part of the city. The door creaked open. Slowly, painfully. I expected to see a woman, maybe a mistress, maybe a maid. But when the face appeared in the crack of the door, the breath was knocked right out of my lungs. Standing there, shivering in the dim light of the hallway, was Maurice. But it wasn't Maurice. It was the man I had lived with for the past 3 days. He was wearing that same wrinkled white t-shirt. He was holding a rag in his left hand. But his eyes. Lord, his eyes. Maurice had eyes like a shark. Flat, cold, confident. This man had the eyes of a frightened deer. He looked at me, and his lip trembled. "Mr. Brooks," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, don't shout. My mama is sleeping." I pushed the door open with my shoulder and stepped inside. "I don't care who is sleeping," I hissed. "I want to know who you are, and why you are wearing my son-in-law's face." The house smelled of old wood, rubbing alcohol, and poverty. It was dark, the curtains drawn tight. In the corner of the small living room, on a hospital bed that took up most of the space, lay an elderly woman. She was breathing with a rattle in her chest, a thin blanket pulled up to her chin. The man backed away from me, holding his hands up. "I can explain, sir. Please. I didn't mean no harm." "Who are you?" I demanded, cornering him against a peeling wall. He took a deep breath, tears welling in his eyes. My name is Marquis. I'm Maurice's brother. I stared at him. Brother? Maurice doesn't have a brother. He's an only child. He told me that himself when he asked for Tasha's hand. He lied, Marquis said softly. We're twins. Identical twins. We were separated at birth. Adoption agencies split us up because our biological parents couldn't feed two mouths. Maurice went to a good family in the suburbs. I stayed in the system until Mrs. Jackson took me in. He pointed to the sick woman in the bed. I looked at the woman, then back at Marquis. The resemblance to Maurice was terrifying. It was perfect, but the posture was all wrong. Maurice stood tall, chest out. Marquis stood with a slump, like the weight of the world was sitting on his shoulders. If you're his brother, I said, my voice low and dangerous, why are you in my house? Why are you eating my food? Why are you sleeping next to my daughter? Marquis flinched. I never touched her. I swear on the Bible, Mr. Brooks. I sleep on the couch in the bedroom. I tell her my back hurts. I would never disrespect your daughter. Then why? I asked. Why the charade? Marquis walked over to the hospital bed and adjusted the woman's blanket with a tenderness that broke my heart. Because of her, he whispered. Mama Jackson got sick. Real sick. Her kidneys are failing. The medicine costs more than I make in a month working at the warehouse. I was drowning, Mr. Brooks. I was going to lose her. He wiped a tear from his cheek. 2 years ago, I ran into Maurice by accident at a gas station. We were both shocked. It was like looking in a mirror. But Maurice, he didn't see a brother. He saw an opportunity. An opportunity? Yeah, Marquis nodded. He calls it the swap. Maurice. He loves Tasha in his own way, maybe, but he loves himself more. He wants to live a single life. He has a girlfriend, a rich woman named Vanessa. She takes him to Paris, to Milan, to islands I can't even pronounce. He wants that life, but he doesn't want to lose the house, the stability, Tasha's income. I felt a fire burning in my stomach. So he hired you. He pays me $5,000 every time I do it, Marquis confessed, looking at the floor. He says, just go cover for me, bro. Be the boring husband. Do the chores. Play with the kid. I'll be back in a week. I needed the money for Mama's dialysis. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, son, I said sternly. But as I looked at his worn-out shoes and the desperate love in his eyes for his dying mother, my anger began to cool, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Does Tasha know? I asked. No, Marquis said. She thinks I'm just moody. She thinks I'm having a midlife crisis. She doesn't know she's living with 2 different men. And Amari? I asked. My grandson. A small, sad smile touched Marquis' lips. Amari is the best part, Mr. Brooks. I can't have kids of my own. Doctors said so. When I'm with Amari, when we draw or play catch, I feel like a real dad. The other day, when he said he liked the nice daddy, that was the best compliment I ever got. My mind flashed back to Amari's drawing. The nice daddy. The one who played catch. The one who sang Amazing Grace. That was Marquis. The mean daddy who yelled, who pushed him away, who was arrogant. That was the real Maurice. I realized then that the imposter in my house was a better father than the real one. I walked over to the old chair in the corner and sat down. The room was silent except for the raspy breathing of Mrs. Jackson. Marquis, I said. Yes, sir. You're a criminal. What you're doing is fraud. It's evil. He hung his head. I know. But, I continued, leaning forward, you're also a victim. Maurice is using you like a spare tire. He's out there drinking champagne in Paris while you're here scrubbing floors and hiding in the dark." Marquis didn't say anything, but his fists clenched at his sides. "I'm going to fix this," I said, standing up. "But I need your help. Are you tired of being the shadow? Are you tired of letting him treat you like trash?" Marquis looked up. For the first time, I saw a spark of fire in his eyes. "Yes, I'm tired." "Good," I said, "because Sunday dinner is tomorrow, and we're going to serve something special." I left the house in the Bottoms and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I had a plan. I dialed Renee. She answered on the first ring. "Pops? Did you find him?" "I found everything, baby girl," I said. "Where are you?" "I'm still at JFK. I called in sick. I couldn't fly the plane knowing he was on it. I let the co-pilot take over. I'm waiting for the next flight to Phoenix." "Good," I said. "Get on that plane. Bring the passenger manifest. Bring photos if you have them. Bring every receipt, every piece of paper that proves Maurice Williams is in France." "I got it all, Pops. I took a picture of him sleeping in his seat before I got off. I have the boarding pass info." "Perfect. Come straight home. Do not call Tasha. Do not warn anyone." I went back home. Marquis, the fake Maurice, was waiting for me in the kitchen when I arrived. He looked terrified, like a dog waiting to be kicked. "Act normal," I told him. "Tasha will be home in an hour. You are going to play the role one last time. But tomorrow the curtain falls." That night was the longest night of my life. I watched Tasha sit on the couch next to Marquis. She put her head on his shoulder. "You feel tense, babe," she said softly. Marquis stiffened, then slowly relaxed. He put his arm around her. Not with lust, but with a gentle protective weight. "Just tired, Tasha," he whispered. "Just tired." I went to my room and prayed. I prayed for Tasha's heart, because I knew I was about to break it. But a bone has to be broken to be reset right. Sunday, the Lord's Day, the day of reckoning. I woke up early and started cooking. I wanted the house to smell like home. I made my pot roast, slow cooked for 8 hours with carrots and potatoes. I made collard greens with smoked turkey neck. I made corn pudding. I set the dining room table with the good china, the plates we only used for Thanksgiving. Tasha came downstairs around noon, looking refreshed. "Wow, Pops! What's the occasion? It smells amazing in here." "Just feeling grateful today, baby," I said, stirring the gravy. "We need to appreciate family while we have them." Marquis came down a few minutes later. He was wearing a nice button-down shirt I had laid out for him. He looked sharp, but his hands were shaking. He caught my eye, and I gave him a subtle nod. "Stay strong." "Where's Amari?" I asked. "He's in the yard drawing," Marquis said. He's making a card for me." His voice cracked a little. We sat down at the table around 2 p.m. The food was steaming. The sunlight was pouring in. It looked like the perfect family portrait. "Let's pray," Tasha said, reaching for Marquis's hand. He took it. "Marquis," I said suddenly, "why don't you lead us in grace today?" Tasha looked confused. "You mean Maurice, Pops?" "Right," I smiled thinly. "Maurice." Marquis cleared his throat. He bowed his head. "Lord, we thank you for this food. We thank you for this roof. We thank you for the love in this house. Please forgive us our trespasses, and give us the strength to face the truth." "Amen." "Amen," Tasha said, opening her eyes. "That was beautiful, babe. You usually just say, 'Good food, good meat, good God, let's eat.'" Marquis managed a weak smile. We started passing the bowls. The clinking of silverware was the only sound. Then, the front door unlocked. Tasha frowned. Who is that? Renee isn't supposed to be back until Tuesday. The door swung open. Renee walked in, dragging her flight bag. She looked exhausted, her uniform rumpled, but her eyes were blazing with fury. She walked straight into the dining room. Renee! Tasha smiled, standing up. Surprise! You're early. Renee didn't smile back. She looked at Tasha, then she looked at the man sitting at the table. Marquis. Renee? Tasha asked, sensing the tension. What's wrong? Did something happen with the plane? Sit down, Tasha, Renee said, her voice hard. What? I said sit down. Tasha sat slowly. She looked at me. Pops, what is going on? We need to tell you the truth, baby, I said, putting my fork down. The man sitting next to you is not your husband. Tasha laughed. A nervous, high-pitched laugh. What? Pops, stop playing. Are you guys pranking me? Of course it's Maurice. I slept next to him last night. No, Tasha, Marquis said softly. He pushed his chair back and stood up. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. My name is Marquis. Tasha looked from me to Renee to Marquis. I don't understand. At that exact moment, the front door opened again. Honey, I'm home. Surprise. The voice was loud, arrogant, booming. Tasha froze. We all turned to the hallway. Walking in, carrying a designer leather suitcase and wearing a suit that cost more than my car, was Maurice. The real Maurice. He walked into the dining room with a big, fake grin on his face. I caught an earlier flight back from the business trip. I wanted to surprise you for din. He stopped dead. He saw Renee. He saw me. And then, he saw Marquis standing at the table, wearing his clothes, eating his food. The silence that filled that room was loud enough to shatter glass. Amari ran in from the backyard, holding his drawing. Grandpa, look at my... He stopped. He looked at the man by the door. Then he looked at the man by the table. His eyes went wide. Two daddies. Amari shouted. I knew it. Two daddies. Tasha screamed. It was a guttural, terrifying sound. She scrambled backward, knocking her chair over, pressing herself against the wall. What is this? What is happening? I stood up slowly, gripping the carving knife I had used for the roast. Not to use it, but because I needed to hold on to something solid. Sit down, Maurice, I said to the man by the door. The real Maurice looked trapped. His face flushed red. He looked at Marquis with pure hatred. You idiot, he hissed. You were supposed to leave by 4 p.m. You can't even tell time. He didn't leave because I told him to stay, I said. Renee threw a manila folder onto the table. It slid across and hit Tasha's plate. Open it, Tasha. Tasha, trembling, opened the folder. Photos, Renee narrated. Taken yesterday. Flight 809 to Paris. First class. That is your husband, Maurice. And that woman hanging all over him? That's Vanessa King. Real estate heiress. Tasha looked at the photos. Then she looked at the real Maurice. You were in Paris? But you were here. You were helping me with the laundry. No, Tasha, I said gently. Marquis helped you with the laundry. Marquis fixed the sink. Marquis played with Amari. Tasha looked at Marquis. He was crying silently. Is it true? She whispered to Maurice. Do you have a twin? Maurice sneered. The mask dropped completely. He didn't look charming anymore. He looked ugly. Yeah, I have a twin. A stray I found in the gutter. I gave him a job. I gave him money. And this is how he repays me. He pointed a finger at Marquis. You are nothing. You are a cheap copy of me. Marquis lifted his head. For the first time, he didn't look down. I may be a copy, he said, his voice shaking but gaining strength. But at least I know how to love my family. You have a son who thinks you're a monster. I've been his father for 3 days, and I know more about him than you learned in 7 years. Shut your mouth. Maurice lunged forward. I stepped in between them, blocking his path. I'm old, but I'm built of iron and grease. You take one more step, Maurice, and I will lay you out on this floor. Maurice stopped. He looked around the room. He saw the disgust in Renee's eyes. He saw the confusion and heartbreak in Tasha's. He saw the fear in Amari's. Fine, Maurice spat. He straightened his jacket. I'm done anyway. I'm sick of this pretending. I'm sick of this small life. Vanessa appreciates me. She treats me like a king. She treats you like a pet, Renee said sharply. And once she gets bored, she'll kick you to the curb too. Maurice laughed. I'm leaving. And I'm taking my money. You aren't taking a dime, Tasha said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. She stood up, wiping her tears. She walked over to Marquis and stood next to him. She didn't touch him, but she stood with him. Get out of my house, Maurice. I want a divorce. And if you try to take Amari, I will show these photos to every judge in the state. Maurice looked at her, shocked by her strength. He scoffed. Keep the kid. He's annoying anyway. That was the nail in the coffin. Maurice turned and walked out the door. We heard his car start and peel away down the street. The room was silent again. Amari walked over to Marquis. He tugged on his shirt. Are you the nice daddy? Marquis knelt down, weeping openly now. Yeah, buddy. I'm your Uncle Marquis. But I promise, I'm the nice one. Amari hugged him. Don't go away. Marquis looked at me, then at Tasha. I should go. I'm sorry, Tasha. I'm so sorry. Wait, Tasha said. She looked broken, but she was looking at him, really looking at him, for the first time. You were the one who prayed? Yes. And you were the one who held me last night when I was crying about work? Yes. Tasha took a deep breath. Don't go yet. Sit down. Eat some pot roast. The divorce was messy. Maurice tried to fight for the house, but with the evidence Renee gathered and the testimony of Marquis, he didn't stand a chance. He left for Europe with Vanessa, and last I heard, she dumped him in Italy a month later. He's broke now, trying to sell fitness supplements online. But this story isn't about him. It's about who stayed. Marquis didn't disappear. He kept his promise. He used the money I loaned him to get his mother better care, and he started coming by the house every day. Not to pretend to be Maurice, but to be himself. He was different. He was humble. He was kind. He was left-handed. He fixed the porch steps. He taught Amari how to draw comics. He sat on the porch with me and listened to my old war stories without checking his watch. It took time. A lot of time. Tasha was hurt, and trust is hard to rebuild once it's shattered. But she saw the way Marquis loved Amari. She saw the way he treated her, like a queen, not a convenience. 6 months after the divorce was final, I walked into the kitchen and saw them. Tasha was washing dishes, and Marquis was drying. He said something that made her laugh, a real belly laugh that I hadn't heard in years. I knew then that we were going to be all right. 2 years later, we were in the backyard again. But this time, there were white folding chairs set up on the grass. There were flowers everywhere. Sunflowers, Tasha's favorite. I stood at the front in my best suit. Renee was the maid of honor, looking sharp in a yellow dress. Amari, now 9 years old, was the ring-bearer, standing tall and proud. The music started. Amazing Grace played on a violin. Tasha walked out. She looked radiant. She wasn't walking toward a lie. She wasn't walking toward a fake. She was walking toward a man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. Maurice stood at the altar. He was crying, of course. He's a crier. When the preacher asked, "Do you take this woman?" Maurice didn't hesitate. He said, "I've been choosing her every day for 2 years. I choose her forever." I sat in the front row, wiping my own eyes. I looked up at the sky and thought about that phone call from Renee. It was the scariest moment of my life, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to us. It cut out the cancer and let the healing begin. The truth is a funny thing. It can destroy you, but it can also set you free. We lost a son-in-law, but we gained a son. A real one. So, let me tell you one last thing. If your gut tells you something is wrong, listen to it. If the handwriting changes, pay attention. And if your pilot daughter calls you from 30,000 feet, you better pick up the phone. Did you like my story? I hope it touched your heart or at least opened your eyes a little bit. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me, if you were in my daughter Tasha's shoes, could you have forgiven Maurice for the deception, or would you have walked away? It's a tough choice, I know. Also, let me know where you are watching this story from. If you enjoyed our time together today, please hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It really helps us bring more of these stories to light. And don't go anywhere just yet. I have left another incredible story for you right here on the screen. You definitely don't want to miss that one. Click right there, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless you all, and watch who you let in your house.